All right, Herc, let's move over to the U.S. Women's National Team. We've got their roster now for the upcoming Gold Cup, which will take place late February, early March here in the United States. 23 players in total called in by interim manager Twyla Kilgore, probably with some input from Emma Hayes, who will take over in a few months. There are 3 non-roster players included in this as well: Mallory Swanson, Savannah DeMello, and Giselle Thompson. We've had her on the show. She's the younger sister of Alyssa. Alyssa not in the camp because she's got a bad back. There's a lot of other youth, though, in this roster. You got 19-year-old Jaden Shaw, 18-year-old Olivia Moultrie, 20-year-old Corbin Albert. She's playing at PSG. All those new names to go along with some familiar names. Alyssa Thompson back in goal. She leads the goalie line. Crystal Dunn is back. And then Lindsay Horan, your captain, along with Sophia Smith and Naomi Girma, just to name a few of the players called in. But the talk around this team is those who have been left out. Let me tell you, Herc, there are some big names. Becky Sauerbrunn, Alex Morgan, just to name a few. What about the Ashleys? Ashley Sanchez, Ashley Hatch, and one of our favorites here on Futbol Americas, Sofia Huerta. So, Herc, of those names or any other, who do you think is the biggest snub on this Gold Cup roster for the U.S. team?
All right, so I'm going to say Alex Morgan, but let me start off by saying this isn't a snub. It should be expected, but we cannot not talk about Alex Morgan on this show, not being involved with the U.S. Women's National Team. Now, listen, she's going to be 35 this summer. 7 goals in the NWSL, a far cry from what she did the year before. Only 2 goals with the U.S. Women's National Team last year in that calendar year. None of those goals were at the World Cup. The U.S. Women's National Team, their worst performance in a World Cup, 4 goals scored. They didn't put the ball in the back of the net. You got to find production somewhere. And if you're relying on an aging forward, as good as she has been historically, that's not the route. There needs to be young blood, new blood. There needs to be an infusion of that talent coming through the pipeline, and this is the moment. You can't always rely on a player like Alex Morgan, who's been a great steward of the game, who's been a great player for the U.S. Women's National Team, but as of late, over the calendar 18 months, if you will, and in this big tournament, the World Cup, she's not been that player you can count on day in and day out. It's not a snub. On paper, it is because of the name, but it's not a snub because of what we've seen from her in her play the last 12 months.
It is, Herc, the second straight camp where she's been left out, and both of those camps were since Emma Hayes took over. For those looking to read between the tea leaves, this is a much more important camp than the one at the end of last year, though, because this team is going to be together, if everything goes well, at the Gold Cup for almost a month. And that means you're really starting to build up for the Olympics. For Morgan not to be a part of that, you got to wonder how it impacts her chances. It's hard to look past Alex Morgan, but to talk about somebody else, I will here, and I'm going to focus in on Ashley Sanchez. To me, Herc, one of the reasons that I was most excited about there being a new coaching staff, whether it was going to be Emma Hayes or not, was that we were going to get a fresh set of eyeballs to evaluate Ashley Sanchez. I thought one of the great mistakes of not only the last World Cup under Vlatko Ananovsky, but really the build-up to the last World Cup under Vlatko Ananovsky was not figuring out what to do with Ashley Sanchez, okay? And I know she's a tweener. I know she's a little bit of a difficult piece to figure out. But when your team lacked creativity, which is what this team lacked all of 2023, not just at the World Cup, but in the build-up, one of your most creative players in Ashley Sanchez ought to be a part, Herc, of that solution. And then I look around the other players that were called in this midfield. Obviously, Lindsay Horan, Rose Lavelle, I'm going to put ahead of a player like Ashley Sanchez. And I know some of these other players maybe don't play the exact same role as a Sanchez. But Albert, just mentioned her, 20 years old. Sam Coffey, Olivia Moultrie, Emily Sonnet. To me, Ashley Sanchez is ahead of all of those players in just straight-up quality. So I would have thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to figure out what Ashley Sanchez's role is in this national team. And I tell you what, it broke my heart to see her leave Washington. But I actually think going to North Carolina is only going to make her a better player. She's only going to be on the ball more, and that's only going to make her a more dangerous player in the NWSL. So seeing her be left off of this team to me is heartbreaking, because I don't think it's a very good omen for her for her Olympic chances in 3 or 4 months' time.
Yeah, here's the thing with Ashley Sanchez. You and I were clamoring, we're yelling top of the hills for her to get on the field. And when she got on the field all throughout the calendar year, didn't really do a lot with it. She was okay in the NWSL, 5 goals, 1 assist. You would expect more assists from such a creative player, but when it came to the U.S. Women's National Team, she had a career year in games started, Seb. It was the most games she's ever started for the U.S. Women's National Team, and maybe it's Vlatko's system, but in the career year of games started for Ashley Sanchez, she had 1 assist to show for it. 0 goals, 1 assist. Vlatko may have been a problem. The setup may have been a problem. At some point, Ashley has to set up responsibility. It was disappointing with the Washington Spirit, and it was disappointing with the U.S. Women's National Team. Hopefully this time away will suit her well.
Look, would have loved to see more of her at the World Cup. I think if we saw more, those numbers would have been quite a bit different. Let's focus in on the players that are there, specifically the ones that are healthy. Let's put Mallory Swanson off to the side because she's not technically in the roster. She will be there training with the team. Who right now for you, Herc, of the players available should be the starting front 3 for this U.S. squad?
I am going with, I said, Smith, Rodman, and Fischel. I'm going to give Mia Fischel the start at 9. Listen, the reality here, Seb, the reality is you infuse new players with number 9 ability. Katarina Macario, she's not a 9, but can play a 9. She's more of a creative force, and that's who would have been my 9. No Alex Morgan, no big name, if you will. In an ideal situation, you have Mallory Swanson, Sophia Smith, and you have Katarina Macario. That's not going to happen here, so I want a 9 who's used to playing in big moments, in front of big crowds. She was doing it at Tigres. She's doing it now at Chelsea in the Champions League, who has projection and room to grow. You could probably have her there for a better part of a decade if she is your person, flanked by creativity and speed. Out of the players who are healthy, that's who I would go with. And you still have a player like Rodman who's chomping at the bit for her venganza or redemption tour with the U.S. Women's National Team, who I think has massive upside. But right now, I think you start thinking, who can be my 9? If it's not Alex Morgan, then who? I need a natural 9.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the formation. If we see what Emma Hayes does at Chelsea, it's a lot of 4-2-3-1. If that's the case, I think I could see Fischel in there. It gives you a chance to get Smith, Rodman out on the wings, and then you can drop in a Lavelle underneath in that kind of 10 position. If they go to a 4-3-3, or at least a straight-up 3-person front line, which is what we've seen a lot of in the past and what we saw a little bit in the last window of 2023, once Emma Hayes had taken over, then I might do something a little bit different. Then I might want to finally see if what Sophia Smith does playing through the middle at the NWSL level can be replicated at the international level. Because if it can be, you could put together a front 3 that could really be a physical nightmare for teams. I'm thinking Smith through the middle, Trinity Rodman to the left, and honestly, Herc, I know we're going very, very young here. After what I saw live at the NWSL Championship game last year with Midge Purse down that right wing, Midge Purse has a lot of qualities where she might get labeled as a super sub for the U.S. Women's National Team. Before we do that to her, let's see if she's got starting quality, because I got a suspicion that she might. So I would love to see Midge Purse get some starts here on the right side of a front 3 for the Women's National Team at the Gold Cup. But you know what? There's a lot of different ways they can play, because the last game that we saw in 2023 was even different. That was 2 central players behind an isolated kind of number 1 up top, which I believe then was Ashley Hatch, another somewhat snub in that list. So lots of options to see how this attack will stack up. Final word on this to you, Herc.
No. When Sebi Salazar says he's got a hunch, it's normally not a hunch. You got some intel. What do you know about Midge Purse here?
No. I don't know. I don't know nothing. I watched her. I watched her live in San Diego. I saw her take over the NWSL championship game. And it's a player who I think the U.S. Women's National Team would do very, very well to get the most out of this year. All right, well, let's talk about the NWSL, because we got a big game coming up. Very excited about joining up with our NWSL coverage partners over at okay, we were going to mention Mallory Swanson was one of the players that was on the list. Where does she fit into your plans there, Herc?
Well, she's not going to play, right? She's still nursing that knee that she got injured back in April. But let's be honest, when we talk about Mallory Swanson, probably the most informed player leading up to that World Cup, And she only played 6 games, or 7 games. She's a leading goal scorer and only played 7 games. Excuse me. She only played 6 games, scored 7 goals. That's how good she was for the U.S. women's national team. Before she got injured, she was in form, running on all cylinders. And I think she's going to be chomping on the bit. Now, there are a few players who are going to be at this Gold Cup training, this camp, just training, trying to get back into rhythm. She is one of them. It is crucial that you get a player like Mallory Swanson, who didn't make last Olympics, if you remember. I remember she coming down to L.A. and interviewing her in the boot room. You would have thought she would have been a shoo-in for the Olympics. She doesn't make it. And we see a different Mallory Swanson. We see a change of chip, a change in that mentality. And she's been cutthroat ever since on the field. They need a player like Mallory Swanson running on all cylinders, a player like Mallory Swanson healthy if the U.S. women's national team is to regain the top spot in the world.
Yeah, you got to think, if she regains the form that she had in early 2023, she's definitely in whatever formation they play, she's going to be in that starting front three. However it shakes out for Emma Hayes.